Sponsored by Catchpoint, the leader in digital experience management.
Hi, I'm Chris Lopez, Technical Marketing Engineer for Catchpoint. Today, we're going to keep diving into Catchpoint's wealth of synthetic tests, with brief overviews of network protocols, helpful use cases, and a hands-on approach to how to interpret this data once it turns up in Catchpoint. Continuing with a pair of network protocol tests that we'll be running against our email service. Now, it goes without saying why email is important, but even if you've already migrated to a cloud service, it's still valuable to be able to test SMTP and IMAP independently of your provider. So whether you're just monitoring system health and performance or keeping the big guys honest with SLA benchmarking, Catchpoint Synthetic Tests are a goldmine of information that can help your team make more informed decisions. So over the course of this video, we're going to review how Catchpoint Synthetic Tests work, where SMTP and IMAP fall in the context of an email service, how to design an SMTP and IMAP test inside of Catchpoint, and then what that data is going to look like inside of Catchpoint and how to interpret it. Let's hop in.
Catchpoint is an industry leader in digital experience monitoring, of which a huge part is synthetic testing. When you execute a synthetic test from one of Catchpoint's nodes, it'll perform a network activity related to the test type and then return unaggregated data, meaning the user is capable of evaluating both individual requests and overall experiences when considering their user experience and service health. Catchpoint synthetic tests can be run from a wide range of nodes, including backbone nodes, which are embedded in ISPs, cloud nodes across every major provider, wireless, last mile, and enterprise nodes as well. In this case, we'll be testing a service with both SMTP and IMAP. SMTP and IMAP protocols are two halves of the same coin. Put simply, one is for sending mail and the other one's for receiving it. If you're running a synthetic test with SMTP, you're trying to figure out whether or not your local Catchpoint node can transmit messages to a receiving email server, either something local or a SaaS platform like Office 365. If you're running an IMAP test, you want to know whether or not the Catchpoint node can receive messages from an email server. So in this case, it's filling the role of a client application. Now, the value of Catchpoint synthetic tests goes beyond simple health tests. Catchpoint can send an email as part of its synthetic test, so it can tell you whether or not your service is operational rather than just online. Now that we're all caught up with SMTP versus IMAP, let's go ahead and design some relevant tests. Using the charm bar here in the dashboard, I'm going to navigate to the control center and then select synthetic to pull up a list of all the synthetic tests that are currently active in my client and domain. Next, I'm going to design a brand new test, and I'm going to select SMTP. And I'll put it into all test types under SMTP tests. So here, I'm going to begin filling in some details. We just call it like SMTP test. Our test location is going to be Office 365. And if I wanted to send a message with it, I actually have that option here. Here, I'll need to identify whether or not my credentials are being sent in the clear or if I'm using some kind of encryption. And below, we're going to be setting things like when we want this to run, labels we want to associate with it, and if there's a specific gateway or address host that we need to be using for troubleshooting and monitoring. Also, down at the bottom, we'd be defining thresholds. These are just basic metrics, as you can see, like with test time and availability, that Catchpoint's going to use to determine whether or not the email service is responding effectively. Finally, the last part that we want to take a look at is targeting and scheduling. This is where we'll actually define what nodes that we want this to run on. As I was mentioning before, we can run this from a backbone node, which can pull data straight from an ISP, or any of the cloud providers, or we can use last mile or wireless to be able to identify local issues that could be impacting my email service among specific users. Once I've defined my run schedule, this test will be ready to go. Before I do that, I want to point out that while the IMAP test is functionally identical in terms of test attributes to the SMTP test, you'd be using this to test the return leg of the traffic, or pulling email from a server rather than sending email to a server. So now we have a pair of tests that are analyzing the complete path of my email service from client to destination. If we want to make the most of Catchpoint's analytics, we'll have to pull the results into a smartboard here. Right off the bat, we're going to see a couple of trends that Catchpoint has identified from data over the last 24 hours. Things like downtime, connect time, wait, and DNS, among others. I mean, this alone would be a great independent tool for verifying SLAs with my cloud or SaaS provider. I can also evaluate the results of specific tests that I've run by switching to scatterplot. Say most of my tests from cloud nodes are showing the all clear, but I have some tests running from backbone nodes or last mile nodes. that indicate the users are basically unable to get good performance or even a connection to my service. That's a huge piece of the puzzle that eliminates hours of toil I'd otherwise spend verifying that our network was okay. Down here, you see a few more tables that separate things by city or ISP or IP address, and the most common error codes you've been getting from these tests. And down here at the bottom is our Network Insights feature. You'll be able to see all of our tests headed towards Microsoft servers. And as I scroll over each hop, we'll be able to identify which ones experienced the most amount of performance issues. This is also able to monitor BGP peering, so we'll be able to see if our mail is getting sent somewhere it shouldn't be. There's a lot of ways to divide the data. With Catchpoint, it's even easier to get a handle on what the situation is and what you should do about it. And with that, you now know how to monitor your email service with Catchpoint. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time.
Sponsored by Catchpoint, the leader in digital experience management.